Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. My name's Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, another bozo on the butt, and I care about you.
And I'm LouiLou. My pronouns are he and him. I am in recovery for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am always in search of balance. And each week we strive to foster a brave space where we can engage in conversations centered around topics of recovery.
And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces by hold up. People were doing things behind the camera and it was so distracting. And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people and more spaces. Oh my God. Hold on a minute. And our intention is to hold and inspire more spaces for better spaces for more people in recovery. Fuck you, Jordan. That's you, Lewis. You have the rest.
Oh yeah, but before we do that, please like, share, and comment, and
you know what this feels like, Lewis? I feel like I'm FaceTiming with my grandma right now.
No, I'll explain to you what happened just in a few minutes.
You're like this. So for people listening, I was moving my head back and forth. In the camera, but let me do the disclaimer. The opinions and thoughts expressed on at the CCC are ours alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. The information shared here is for general information purposes only. In other words, we're just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you. Absolutely. So Lewis, you're not here today, and that's because you are
COVID. I'm sick.
You're sick.
And because I'm not on the payroll, I have to show up. I don't have any sick time.
Not yet.
They sent me a message and said, nice try, hooker.
Who said that?
No, I'm kidding. It's like I was gonna back out of it, but then I realized that, why would I do that to Anthony at the last minute?
Oh, like not show up? It's fine. It's fine. I'm happy to see you. How are you feeling?
Right now I'm a little dizzy. I'm amazed that the struggle was real trying to get into. Thank God for Brandon, because there was no way I could type the address to get into this room. I was like, it was not happening.
Yeah, I didn't think it would. I wasn't very confident.
And then I don't know. If you've ever been a guest on here that remotely, and then you're in the you have to wait backstage. It feels like purgatory.
It feels like AA during COVID times. You know, when like people would keep you in the waiting room, and they'd have like all that Zoom superiority conflict.
Exactly.
Right.
Other than that, it was just Pride weekend. I had a really good weekend, and I was talking to my sponsor. I have no regrets because I had a really good time.
You had no regrets about Pride?
No, not at all. I mean, it's like,
what an interesting way of introducing that. What I said, what an interesting way of like introducing that idea, like saying like no regrets. Yeah, exactly. Like, would you normally be regretful?
No. Well, I mean, normally I'd have to go get tested for chlamydia or something else. But
I mean, I think
the fact that it's COVID, I feel like I've matured.
You know what? You seem like the kind of person that could give yourself chlamydia.
Okay.
Benji makes fun of me.
You absolutely seem like the type of person that would give yourself Shigella.
You look like you still use water-based lube.
You obviously look like you still use spit. I don't even think you know what lube is. And you usually have a dry mouth.
Oh man.
Wow, it's like the student has become the teacher. You are vicious.
I think there's something that happens when like the lights are on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Pride for me was fine. We went to Mike and Jose's thing. That was a lot of fun for the pink party. And that felt like contained and fun. And then the following day, I went to the Alameda County Fair in order to stay out of the city.
Nice.
But I heard you guys had fun at
Juanita's party.
yeah, Juanita's party. I heard it was a good
Didn't
time.
he look so adorable in his French outfit? Whatever. It was
Yeah,
super
yeah, yeah.
cute.
He put that look together. Yeah, it was really sweet.
Yeah.
Did you notice his eye makeup? He had like really cute like pink stuff in here. And then
No, I didn't want to look in his eye because I don't want you to come back to me and ask you why you were looking in my man's eyes. I know you.
you could look in his eyes.
Yeah, no.
He knows where home is. Okay.
Okay. Wow.
I
He
think
knows where home is.
I think he's actually watching now. Well, you know what? Let's introduce today's topic. We've talked plenty of shit already.
Absolutely.
Today's topic is, we're introducing the month, and we're going to be talking about interpersonal relationships and recovery. And just to give you kind of like a breakdown for the month, so next week we'll be talking about like relationships at work. So what's it? Relationships with your coworkers, bosses, authority figures, etc. We're gonna have a week where we're talking about family and friends. And then a week where we're talking about like platonic romantic relationships and recovery. And then on our last week, we're going to have an expert in who's a somatic therapist who happens to be my partner, and we'll be
It's
talking.
about time so people can put a face with a name.
Yeah, so he'll be on at the end of the month. He's one of the most brilliant people I know, and that's not just
a fabulous build up.
Yeah. He's not, and not just because I love him, but he's brilliant and he has very interesting ideas. So yeah, this month is interpersonal relationships in recovery. So introducing that. What were you gonna say, Louis?
No, and you know who's joining us next week, or if
Leslie.
she's on the mend, Anka.
Oh, Anka's next week, and then
Yeah,
Leslie's the following
yeah,
week. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's really good. It's super exciting.
It is super exciting. The first thing that comes to mind when thinking about relationships is no tea, no shade for present company, but I think about like people who like come into recovery, especially like queer recovery, and they start to get booed up really fast.
Oh, absolutely.
No tea, no shade. No tea, no shade to anyone here. And I think part like that, I bring that up because I feel like relationships, for me at least, there were like it was one way of kind of like escaping, either like through sex or like cupcaking, which is another way of saying like like being flirty, and that kind of thing.
Cupcaking?
Yeah, cupcaking.
Is that a new term?
No, it's an old term. It's probably from the East Coast.
Okay, that's what it is.
I think was that Nora? Hi Nora, good to see you.
Hi Nora.
Hi Nora. Nora just wrote in, and then Anka just said hi. Hi Anka, good to see you too. So what comes to mind for you when you think about like interpersonal relationships and recovery?
Well, I think about the personal relationship I have with myself. I mean, I feel like one of the things about recovery, when you dive in and you take it seriously, it's an opportunity to kind of look inside you, to kind of look at you and see how how you've been doing things. Because honestly, I don't know about you, but before I was floating through this existence and not really kind of communicating with myself. I was just going with the flow, and not communicating with yourself means that you like, that saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for everything.
No, I don't know that.
Well, it's a southern but yeah, it's the truth. It's like I gotta stand for something, and the work that we do through the steps, specifically the 12 steps, is we reintroduce ourselves to ourselves. And so that's what I thought. That's what I think about.
Oh, cool. The first thing I thought when you said your relationship with yourself, I was like, I'd break up with you.
You probably would, but then that's because
I'm just fucking with you. Hi, Justin. Justin just wrote hi.
Hi, Justin.
Um,
You would break up with me. Wow. You know what? I am trying to be nice. I am trying not to.
I'm done. I think I'm taking advantage of you because you have COVID.
Okay. Because right now it's like I'm not as on as I would be. Normally I have really sharp comebacks. And what I'm gonna do is just catch you in a dark alley and give you COVID in your butt.
I'm gonna have butt COVID. You know what? Speaking of butt COVID, have you heard of that? Like that new STI? It's like a sexually transmitted version of ringworm.
Oh
have you heard of this?
I saw a picture. I think I saw pictures of it. Yes.
It's like your screensaver.
Well,
Uh,
it's like a message that you got from your doctor. Boom, 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 boom.
um,
Pow!
uh,
Take notes, Jordan.
yeah, there's yeah. So there's this like new STI, ringworm, a sexually transmitted version of ringworm.
That,
Um, yeah, we had like I think I saw the first case was reported in California like last month or something like that.
is it something that is like, you know how some, like with monkeypox, was it a in the gay community, or is it in
Well,
everybody?
so the first case was in New York City. Oh, that's crazy. You just asked that. Here's why. So the first case was a gay man, and it was in New York City. And do you know where he was traveling from or where he traveled? You ready
Where?
for this?
Where?
It was Europe and then Greece and then
Oh,
Istanbul. And I was like, oh my
oh,
God, was he one of these people that was on that trip?
oh my God! It's like I'm gonna reach out to them and say, I hope you guys haven't been doing anything.
Yeah. So
Oh,
I thought that was crazy. Um, but there's also a way that like gay men could be scapegoated. So I don't know if that was like intentionally done.
absolutely. I was thinking that too.
Yeah, I don't know if because it had anyway. So that's the story behind that. Talking about interpersonal relationships.
What I can say is that on this podcast, I have talked a lot about my relationship with, like what we're talking about next week, my relationships at work with coworkers that in my mind suck. Uh,
Yeah,
Sometimes my, you know, whether or not it's my inability to communicate what's on my mind or whatever, or whether or not a person is just not listening, that has just been a bit of a struggle.
can I
And
tell you? Sorry, go ahead.
go ahead, no, go ahead.
Well, can I tell you something I struggle with? If we're talking about relationships, so you know how in the rooms we say like we're a program of second chances. We make there's room created for people when they're new and they may have like old ass behavior, right? Like either gossiping or like
Uh
talking
huh.
behind people's backs or just shady behavior. And so there's that, right? And then so I struggle with that sometimes where like I'm like, yeah, we make allowances for people. And then sometimes I wonder, like, are those allowances being like exploited by people? Because like I would be remiss if I didn't say, for example, that like in 12 step, like in any organization of people, you have like people who are predatory or you have people who are, like bad apples, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly.
And so I sometimes struggle with that, like kind of creating room for that. And I've talked to a lot
I
of,
struggle with it a lot.
yeah.
I realize what's helped me, and what I'm struggling specifically with it now is that, yes, we do make room, but making room doesn't mean you overlook the behavior. I think it's important to challenge it. And
Mhm,
sometimes, like one of our fellows says, it's like everybody deserves recovery in this room. It just doesn't have to be next to me. If
mhm,
I can't be of service, if I can't be best to you, then it's probably better for me to love you from across the street. But
mm,
yeah, it's like I agree with you that that's what a lot of times, people look to us to be all forgiving and all of this and all that or whatever. And in the meantime, they're not. It doesn't seem, or maybe the impression is that they're not doing anything to change the behavior.
yeah, yeah. And then you have like, because essentially what we're talking about is like accountability
Oh yeah.
and accountability and boundaries. Um, like just recently there was a conference that was canceled because there was a sober conference that was canceled because I guess someone who was part of the sober community stole money, right?
And it wasn't the first time that happened.
Right. Not the first conference or like yeah. That's happened
Yeah,
at other sober conferences. And what was the other thing? Oh, and then you have like, I was at a meeting not too long ago and the speaker was sharing and the secretary like abruptly interrupted them in this kind of what could have been perceived as like a hostile way.
absolutely. I was
And
there too.
yeah, I know you were there. I'm trying to be like indescript so that I'm not calling
Um,
anyone out.
there's
And
no way you've are. All you can do is just continue the story and just not say names, but
yeah,
everybody
I guess I'm
knows.
not saying names, but so like I think about something like that and I go, like, man, that's like I don't even know what to do with that, you know? Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. And like sometimes I think to myself, like, you know, like we're like an imperfect group of people, and so like
Mhm.
obviously, you know, there's occasionally going to be drama, and I also think like like there are all of these tropes behind, not tropes, but like all of these, I don't know what we could call them, but like don't, you know, date in your first year, or like maybe you shouldn't date in recovery, or like, which all have to do with like types of relationships, right? Because in and how to, and like straight AA, like only like men sponsor men and women sponsor women, which I think is really interesting. I'm sure they're like outliers, but um
Well, it's
yeah.
one of those. Well, I always think it's kind of weird, when you put restrictions on what people can do. Because I always say, like, we're adults when we come in. Most of us are adults when we come in, even if we haven't been acting like adults, and we're pretty defiant. And the last thing I need you to do when I am wanting to challenge everything is for you to tell me what I can't do. So when I'm working with sponsees or anyone, it was different before in the earlier in recovery, but the more time that I get, the more I realize, you know what? There's no right or wrong way to do this. I think that if an individual, especially with someone wanting to date early on or whatever, because I mean we're always looking for love. Um, if you are not willing to have some sort of conversation and constantly kind of check your motives in the situation, then that's what the challenge is. Because I'm always like, the only reason why I would suggest that someone not get into a relationship is because that first year is supposed to be about you taking care of you, being selfish. And when you invite somebody else into this, you have to take them in consideration. And not everybody's mature in the way that they need to be. All of a sudden it's really easy to make one of those motherfuckers your higher power. you know I
Yeah.
mean, but other than that, it's like, uh I have had recently that situation with a sponsee, and it didn't work out, and we've worked through it. And I think that, again, it's like rule 67. Is it rule 67, rule 16, or whatever it is? It's like there are no rules. It's like you can get hurt now or you can get hurt later. That's the rule.
We have a comment. One second. That was a comment. Oh, like, Justin writes, all forgiving isn't necessarily warranted when harm continues to be caused by someone. Agreed, Justin. Agreed.
Not at
Agreed.
all, not at all. And we all know, because of what we've gone through, when somebody's really making an effort to change behavior, their actions speak to that. And now, I'm not like, oh, get him out of here, throw him away. But the only thing that I can do is take care of myself. And so I
Mhm.
choose not to surround myself with individuals, and that's just it.
You know, I have there's three things I want to comment on that you said. So you know how you said like the first year is about you.
Oh, yeah.
Right, right. So I understand that. And I also like struggle with kind of I like struggle with like these sayings or ideas that are not like in the big book or in the literature,
You
right?
said
Like
that before. I agree.
yeah, I mean, so sometimes I have a hard time with that. Like and I heard an old timer once say like, you know, Anthony, it might not be in the big book, but this is coming from our experiences. And but I also think so that was my first thing. The other thing is I think that we get to where we're going whether we're kicking and screaming or we take the easier softer way. Like
Absolutely.
this is my opinion. You know, like regardless of what's happening, like you're going to get to where you're going. That's it. You know what I mean? Like, and in my opinion, there really is no such thing as a bad decision because literally every, like, the only kind of, I think maybe the only hurtful thing is like inaction because then you're not like living. So as long as like there's something that's coming next, even if it like isn't in your best interest, like, you know, you're going to either stumble upon insight because you have to
Yeah.
or because, you know, whatever. Right. And I think when I think about that, like whether it's like at work or a romantic relationship, I think that for me at least, it's like I have to believe that regardless of what the relationship is or the outcome, that like I'm going to be fine. Right. Like
Absolutely.
that is what I have to put my energy in, because I can't necessarily, like, pain is inevitable, conflict is inevitable. Right. And so I can't try to like avoid those things. I think that's where a lot of the sayings come from. Like, oh, well, you shouldn't date within your first year. And like, I think the idea is like, it's protective. Right. Or, like any number of things. But
Shouldn't it? I feel like we say like, and we're you and I are speaking specifically about 12 step because that's our experience. And a lot
yeah,
of times the way that it's approached is we encourage these are suggestions, like the suggestion of breathing oxygen, and maybe a different approach should be taken. You know, more more on the terms of like, what, this is my experience. Maybe, instead of don't do this, don't do that, because I know that there are sponsors that give you a list of things that you can't do. And I'm like, that's not my responsibility. That's not my job, My job is not to do any of those things, because you're gonna, like, hello? More than anything, I want you to trust me. And the way I'm gonna get trusted is that you feel like you can bring anything to me.
mhm.
And me telling you from the get-go what is not going to be acceptable is not a way for you to get to trust me.
Right, right. And I think too, like, one of the things, I have to burp so bad, and it's because like I chug this water, and I know
I'm gonna fucking mark that the like no this one is
I,
burping and everything. It's like
I
whatever.
know it's I'm not. Okay, well,
Okay,
okay.
go ahead.
It's not like
Go
you're.
ahead, Precious.
It's not like you're Cinderella. For people listening, I'd be interested in like what people's experiences are. Any comments or thoughts that come up. But I think what I really, Nora writes, who hasn't engaged in a relationship their first year? Okay, call it like it is, Nora.
Exactly. And
Call it like it is.
I think the other thing is like we
Nora said you are all hoes. That's what she said.
no, but I feel like the
Hi,
conversation
Sam.
needs to be had. Conversation needs to be had about like some of the breakdown in platonic relationships as well, because I've seen some messiness. I've had some people that kind of tap into like everything that's toxic about me, and I've had to fight to get away from them when I didn't want to. You know how that is, like when you're all,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I've had, oh God,
Louis, what's that saying from The Color Purple? I had to fight. What
I
was
had to
it?
fight all my life. But yeah, all my life I had to fight.
Eric Anderson wrote that he'd waited 2 years in recovery before he dated someone in the rooms. And so what I wanted to say earlier before you interrupted me is that what I think is
Wow.
interesting.
Wow. What I wanted to say earlier before you interrupted me, because you had to throw that little gem in there, huh?
Yeah. It's a tired one, but it's a good one and it's
Yeah,
accurate.
go
But
ahead.
so what I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to say is, okay, Steven, you didn't need to do the sound effects. Fucking shady people behind the.
Wait, I have to say this. You with the bandana and that background, everything looks like a really cheesy version of Into the Heights.
That feels racist. That
I'm
feels
waiting for
racist.
I'm waiting for you to start singing.
Oh, Lewis.
Go ahead, go
Um,
for it. I don't want to interrupt you again.
Sam Martinez said, "Free my boy." LOL. Sam, who's Sam? I feel like that. Can you bring up Sam again? I'm going to look really closely at them. Who's Sam? Do you know Sam?
I don't know, Sam.
I can't tell from the picture. Sam, anyway, there was a comment from Sam. Hi, Sam. Okay, so what I wanted to say is one of the things that I appreciate about the rooms that I think is kind of magical is, for me at least, like it taught me how to be in relationships with other people, right?
Yeah.
That shit took me time too, because I thought when I first started coming to the rooms, like I thought that you were going to be fast friends with everyone and that everyone was like well-intentioned or whatever. But what I learned with time is like, actually, that's not true. That I had to, so what I did learn how to do is like, I learned what were the things that I needed in a friendship. right? It wasn't that I was going to be friends with everyone. It was that like I noticed like, oh, I gravitate toward people who are like calm or like are friendly, right? I also had to learn like not to feel left out if I notice like groups of people or cliques, you know. Um, the other thing I've heard of people dealing with, and this has certainly happened to me before, is like, oh, you hear about, like a group of people getting together to play a game or to go out somewhere, and you're like, hey, wait, why wasn't I invited? Or if why? Okay, can I tell you a story about that?
Yeah.
And this is
except for the fact that you're usually the person who does the game night and doesn't invite me.
Oh, bitch,
So
where?
I'm kidding.
No.
I'm kidding.
I think that okay. Well, that's for okay. I can't even respond to
No,
that.
don't.
So
Just don't.
so, oh, man, Lewis, I just forgot what I was going to say.
You
So
were going to tell a story.
I was going to say okay. So talking about like dating in the rooms, right? Okay. So Sam says, if I may, what is redemption to you? Oh, Sam, well, you are asking the questions.
I love that.
Oh, Sam is asking, what is redemption for me? I will come back to that question. So I was like, I dated someone. I was like dating someone and it didn't work out. Actually, we weren't dating. It's a whole story. And they had a game night and I wasn't invited. And I had to, and like, I remember thinking to myself, like, Anthony, that's what happens. Like you foreclose on certain relationships if they like don't work out, and I had to ask myself, like, is that something I'm comfortable with? Like,
what you're saying is there are consequences to the way that you move through situations. If
yeah,
you're
100%.
not if you're not mindful about how you move through any situation, any friendship, platonic relationship, or whatever, there are consequences.
Yeah, I would even say that, like, even if you are mindful, there still might be consequences.
Absolutely,
Right?
but it's like if you're mindful or you're thoughtful, if you lead with love, if your motives are right, then it's kind of like the third step. You do everything that you can, and then you turn over the results. But if you just are reckless, that's where the problem is. And this is a nice seg into answering his question about redemption.
Mm. So you're going to
For me,
answer it or what?
well, for me, like I believe that we all are working towards redemption. I
Mm.
think that the problem here is that we're all human,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that for anybody like searching for redemption who struggles and everything, you kind of have to. What's the best way to say it? Like, I mean, as much as I'm not a factor, and I shouldn't be a factor in somebody else's redemption plot line. The only thing, if they can be considerate, but I shouldn't be a factor. Do you know what I'm saying? What I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like I come with my own set of like whatevers,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say sometimes I have to take actions that are not going to sit well with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't take them, then they may be detrimental to me. So I have to take them. And yeah, so I think that like redemption is about like figuring out what we're doing, figuring out who I want to be, who I want to become, trying to do that with as much grace as I can, and being getting some acceptance around the fact that you may lose some people in this process, because people
Mm.
don't have to accept you. I think redemption is accepting yourself.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about the word redemption, because I don't remember using it, but I will give a
You didn't.
definition
Oh
for it.
no.
Yeah, I know. Well, I
Sam
know.
did.
Sam asked it. And so I recently ran into a person in recovery. Okay, I'll come back to you in a second. So I think redemption. So redemption is like a very loaded word because it has religious connotations.
Yeah.
It means to be redeemed is like to be kind of cleansed of sins or to be kind of cleared of sin, right? To be redeemed or saved. And I don't think I have that kind of power. Like I don't think I can redeem. And I don't know that like redemption outside of the context of like religion, like there are no, hold on, there's like alarm going off in the back. I don't know that outside of like religion or some institution, like that redemption really exists outside of that, because it assumes that there's a power that gets to decide whether or not you are redeemed, right? So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is like, if we're talking about like redemption and say like recovery, I agree with Lewis. I think that's like something you get to do for yourself, right? And my hope is that, and this is something that I believe at my core, is that like everyone is inherently valuable. Everybody has inherent value. And there's nothing you can say or do that somehow makes you less significant. And I think that applies to like the most egregious of mistakes. I think it applies to like the most evil among us, is that like that, you know, all of those lives, they have worth and they have value. And the reason why I say that is because if someone gets to decide what life is, I guess, more important, right? The opposite has to be true. So anyway, where I'm trying to land here is that the second we start saying like one person is less than, then that means, or one person is better than, that means that somebody else has to be less than. And I feel like that's too slippery and it's too dangerous. But I do want to see what Sam wrote in. So Sam wrote, how do you show compassion toward those people? Sometimes compassion to people is compassion choosing not to engage.
Exactly. That's just, if I don't feel like I can show compassion, because number one, I don't have to be that person. Like like I said earlier, it's like everybody deserves recovery. It doesn't have to be next to me. But if I don't feel like I can bring anything of value to this, then it's better for me to step aside and let someone else who can do it. Because what my personal feelings about somebody may be my personal feelings, and that it's unfair to kind of expose people to that, unless it's affecting me directly.
My understanding of compassion is the desire to free someone of suffering. Like that's, I think, what I understand of compassion. And then there's compersion, which I think is like taking on other people's suffering. So I think like the way you show someone, that's what I'm saying. Oh, well, Sam agrees with you, so I could just stop talking, but I can, but to kind of like round off my thought, like sometimes I think compassion is like this kind of overblown term, right? That kind of gets kind of amorphous. And I think maybe if I had to rephrase the question, I would say like, how could I be of service to that person and myself? And sometimes that means like you are disengaging.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, yeah. Sam, thank you for the question. It's a good one. Anka writes, I'm loving the finger wagging version of Lulu right now.
I know, I'm super passionate. It's like, I'm all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anka.
So Sam writes, can I extend on that? LOL. If they extrapolate on agregos things, egregious things. Oh, you want me to say what egregious is? Is that what they're asking? Can I extend on that if they are extrapolating on egregious? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I know what you're asking. But that's probably because it's really bright in here. I think that, how do you compassion in the face of adversity? These are very good questions. Do you have an answer to that, Lewis?
And can you say it louder? Because I can't see. I can't see it because my eyes are crossed.
Oh, so you
And,
got COVID, and so now you can't see?
well, I can't see it. What is it?
It says, Sam writes, how do you show compassion in the face of adversity?
In the face of adversity?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I
I don't
mean,
know that I would phrase the question that way, not because there's anything wrong with the way you phrased the question.
yeah,
But
exactly.
I think what I would ask is like, what is the role of compassion in our relationships? And I think some relationships tend to be adversity in some relationships. And
Exactly.
right. And so like it doesn't have to be like compassion for them as it is so much compassion for yourself. But I also don't know that like that's a context in which I can really think about compassion right now necessarily.
And I feel like I measure every situation differently depending on the person and my relationship. Because there obviously we have people in our lives that are challenging, but for some reason we love them and we are good with how they show up.
Yeah.
and how and it just continues to be challenging, and we continue to put up with it until we can't put it up with it any longer. So I
Yeah.
think that I think in the in the face of adversity is like you deal until you can't deal.
Yeah, I'm wondering. So we have people behind the production table, and I'm wondering if they have an answer to this. Like,
Yeah, aren't
do
you on
either
mic?
one of you have an idea about like compassion, showing compassion in the face of adversity, Stephen or
Why don't
Jordan?
you go ahead and take this one, Jordan?
I mean, I think compassion can look a lot of different ways, right? Like it can be actionable or it can be inactionable, right? I think it's all contextual, right? And I think something to talk to somebody else about.
She said contextual.
Contextual.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think showing compassion in the face of adversity, I think it is an interesting way to phrase it. But I think to have that sounds like if it's difficult to give compassion, right? How do you give compassion when you have a difficulty expressing that towards that person, right? That may be something that maybe it's not time to give compassion for, right? Maybe take a time out, take some time to yourself and figure out how can I be more compassionate.
Yeah. I also think there's like an overcorrecting that happens sometimes when people are in recovery, but I'll speak for myself. Like they're like, someone gets sober and then they think that they have to have the right answers and the right behavior all the time. And so they like deny themselves the capacity to feel anger, or they like shortchange themselves from like having feelings or speaking like vocalizing their needs because they're so worried on like being the best person possible. And so there is this overcorrecting that I think happens. And I bring that up because I think like the idea, circling back to this idea of compassion, and like the idea of feeling like you have to show compassion, that like compassion is something that like shows up in all kind of spaces or relationships. There's something about that doesn't quite like align for me, because I just don't know that like life is that kind of black and white.
Yeah,
I think that things are, it doesn't matter
especially
what the relationship is.
especially not depending on what our traumas are. If it's something that triggers me or that takes me to a place that is unsafe for me, then I need to step away from it.
Yeah.
I Yeah, it's like if I'm uncomfortable, I get to trust that what I'm feeling, and I get to work through that. What I will say is like I was thinking about as we're talking, I've had situations in recovery where a person has shown up a certain way, and I dismissed them. I completely cut them off or whatever, and then there was a shift or something in, and I started to see a difference. And I have a few friendships that are really, really tight. Like all of a sudden, whatever the change was, it was like I see them in a different way. And so I think what I do for myself is that you know it's like you said earlier. I think everybody has value.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to, but if for me it's super important for me to make sure that the space in which I am that I feel safe, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Oh,
I want
that's
to add to that. It feels a little trite to say it, but living is fucking hard, right? Like living is really hard. And I've talked about this before where like sometimes I don't like, I look at older people and I'm like, man, how did they make it? Because just like especially speaking as someone who's like, I'm gay, I'm brown, I'm an addict, right? Like I'm HIV positive, like I grew up in the hood, right? And so I think about like kind of all the different like things that I had to go through, and I'm like, that's really hard. But I don't think that like you need to have, like, even given my background, like I don't think that like difficulty and living necessarily needs to be kind of like contextualized in that way. But I do, and because you can have all the money in the world, right, and still have all the issues. You can have all the resources in the world and still have issues. And so I just want to say that, like the first thing is like I think living is so fucking difficult. And I also subscribe to the idea that like everyone has the same fundamental needs, and it's only when in the pursuit of those needs, like in our differences in how we pursue our needs, like that's where conflict comes from. It's like, yeah, we all have the same need for like love. We all have the same need to be like heard and seen and like to be inquired into. And, depending on what your history is, people are going to go about having those needs met in different ways. And some of those needs, some of those methods are like maladaptive, and they're hurtful, and they don't serve us. And, when we get sober, sometimes, if we're fortunate, we learn how to have those needs met in another way. So Anka writes, I do try to have compassion for people when stuff goes down, but I also don't want to sugarcoat my real feelings when someone pisses me off. I feel like I get to have all of my feelings, and once I feel them is when I get to that compassion. Thank you, Anka.
I love that.
Nora writes, for me, I need to disengage and process before I approach the situation. Thank you, Nora. Anka writes, Nora, yes, you said it better than me. Sam writes, how can we be nice when people are so out of place? Sam, it's because we're nice, not for them, it's for us.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I don't want someone else to take me out of me, It's like I'm gonna try to be as cordial as I can and disengage, as you put it.
Oh, I'm living for this question here. Hello, Derek. Derek Wallace writes, if you're the challenging party in the relationship, how can you practice the principle of acceptance of 1, yourself and your process, and 2, other ways of detaching or practicing compassion for themselves? That is such a fucking excellent question. Thank you, Derek. We'll take it. Stephen, put it back. So the first part of that is like, if you're the challenging party in a relationship, how can you practice the principle of acceptance of yourself and your process? Louis, you want to take that, or?
Well, okay, so it depends on the whole idea of challenging, because if it is just who you are, say you're a person who's passionate about like politics, about activism or whatever, and you're finding yourself engaging with folks who just are not there or whatever. I mean, I think that it's key to make sure that you're really kind of seeking out people that you gel with. I think that, like, if the things that you're passionate about, folks don't have any. I'm thinking about how things have been for me in the past.
Well,
Like,
Louis, one of the things that you've said before, which I think is very interesting, you say, what if being a bitch is being myself? Or something along those lines. Do you remember saying that?
no, absolutely.
Yeah, you're like, what if my bad attitude is who I am? Maybe you didn't say bad attitude, but that's how I translate it.
That's what you thought, huh?
That's what I heard.
Well, I think then on that note, the first portion is you got to get some acceptance around who you are.
Yeah, this is where I was going to go with that. Yeah. Well, dovetailing off of that, or dovetailing this, I think that you, the general you, I feel like to the general you, it's like, you don't have to be anyone other than who you want to be.
Absolutely.
Born to know. You know what I mean? But I think second to that is like, and if you're talking about acceptance, you have to accept, or I need to accept, that people are going to have reactions to how I show up to my relationships. And I have to ask myself, like, what are my priorities here? Is it more important for me, for example, to be like a nasty human being? Is it more important for me to always voice my opinion? Is it, like, I have to ask myself that. And then I also have to be prepared for what that looks like, because if I'm not prepared for how that looks like, that's where the tension shows up for me. That's where the anxiety, the self-hating, etc.
It's a way to sort through bullshit. It's a way to sort through bullshit. If people aren't able to accept you as how you show up, maybe those aren't the right relationships for you.
Yeah.
But I mean,
and I would also add to that, Louis, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, if these aren't even related, what'd you say? If it is a relationship that you're willing to, if this isn't a relationship that you're willing to kind of be flexible with, then go ahead.
Well, the second part of Derek's question is other ways of detaching or practicing compassion for themselves. And I think I love that part of the question. I mean, this is just a very rich question. These have all been great contributions, everyone. Thank you. Is, for example, when like I have dealt with kind of like the darkest moments of my life, or when I've been really prickly, what have you, like, I think I I can't be my own worst enemy. You know, like I've had to work very hard, and through, you know, thank goodness because of recovery, making like going into myself like a safe place. You know, like I feel like that's the first place that I need to be comfortable is inside of my body. Because in the, you know, like at night I go to bed with myself, you know, I wake up with myself, etc. And so I have to make that place okay, you know. And part of that for me is like if I'm not feeling the absolute best, or because I'm angry or whatever, it's like being okay with that anger, you know, like I don't need to criticize the way I'm feeling or the way I'm thinking. Because, you know, that's never helped anyone, I don't think. Maybe it has, but it hasn't me. There was a couple comments that came up, but Steven like just took them off the screen. Until I realized that person has a lot more to go until they get to that bottom. Yeah, of course, Sam. Is compassion not voicing an opinion, though? Compassion not voicing an opinion? I mean, I shoot that back to you. You know what I mean? I feel like these are great questions, and I think that they're person specific and they're context specific. And so I'm wondering if you're in a situation where, like, you know, it depends on what your relationship is. Is that showing compassion to them or ourselves?
Contextual.
Yeah, it's contextual, as Jordan would say. I think with that, I think we have to land the plane. Is that right, Steven?
Can you do the reading, because I can't read them from here.
The reading, yeah, I'll do it.
One more
here.
comment from Derek.
Oh, let's see that comment. I think showing compassion to yourself can extend to the other person and how they see that is their work. Thank you, Derek. I think Derek was replying to Sam. Nora says, thank you.
Thank you.
Derek, can't pour from an empty cup. Hey,
yes.
Okay, Derek.
Hallelujah.
Okay, Derek.
Yes.
Can't pour from an empty cup. I love that. So, you know, before we close out, I want to say thank you to everyone's comments. This was a nice, engaging conversation. Anka writes, Stephen, what is going on over there? Like, you're not even telling me that these comments are coming in. You're just pushing them forward.
I'm playing them as they come in.
Oh, okay. What the fuck? I'm trying.
People
Okay,
are chatty tonight.
yeah,
Oh my
I
God.
love it. I love it. For keep bringing that Stephen was not criticizing. We love when the chat is live.
Have some compassion for Steve.
Yeah. Fuck that. Like, I kid. Like Marianne Williamson says about relationships, sometimes the train doesn't stop at your station. Pass early. Ooh, okay, Anka. Damn rights. For real, though. Great discussion tonight, Justin wrote. Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone for participating. You know, this month we're going to be talking about family, friends, work, platonic, romantic relationships, and then, of course, at the end of the month we'll have a therapist on. So, with that being said, we're going to land this plane. The Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community. We provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth. Our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support. You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us, at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast. Tune in every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time when we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels. Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.